what's up, everybody? Welcome to the sixth interview of Unlimited and Upgraded Consciousness. I'm going to be having new interviews every single month right here, so keep staying tuned. And today I've got Courtney Runyon, who she's a motivational speaker. She's an author. She had a really tough experience from an immune condition that landed her quadriplegic, and you went through all sorts of stuff. And I find her really inspiring because you know because she went through what she went through. I mean, she still became really open and vulnerable, and she started like expressing herself very vulnerably on social media and attracted a huge following, and really was helping heal people while she was healing. And through her own experience, she ended up like getting a lot of her function back. And now she's walking, and she's not completely, her hands and stuff are still kind of paralyzed and stuff. But I just find her story really amazing, and the way she shares herself with others really kind of blows me away. Because for me, when I had my accident 14 years ago, I was nowhere near any of that. I was really hiding, and I didn't really want to express myself, and I suppressed a lot of my emotions. And I just think she's a really good example of expressing yourself and being vulnerable. And I think if we all, if we all decide to live like that in our lives, we're going to be helping so many people. We're going to be healing ourselves. And I think she's just a really great example of how to live. And it took me years to come to that understanding for myself. And so I hope this serves you guys in learning how to live like this for yourself. So more and more and more, we're not really holding on to our experiences and holding on to these emotions, because they really drive the way we feel and the way we think in our everyday lives. And so I think it's important to be able to process our emotions and to move forward. And we don't have to hold on to the past. We can keep moving forward. We keep living our dreams. But it really comes down to letting go of these things that hold us back, so that we can keep going in that direction. And so without further ado, y'all, Courtney Runyon, check out our interview coming up right now. All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the next conversation for Unlimited and Upgraded Consciousness. Today we have Courtney Runyon. Is that how you say your last name? Okay, yeah. Cool. Courtney Runyon, I came across her really I think over the summer, and was really inspired by her videos and was really inspired by her story. So I'm really, really happy to bring her to this program. And Courtney, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're about?
Yeah, of course. And can you hear me okay? Because you're breaking up a little bit to me.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. I just want to make sure that I don't just talk this whole time and then it's like, bam, I can't stay and listen to this. Okay, yeah, I'm Courtney Runyon. Let's see, I'm 36 now, but when I was 32 years old, crazy things went down. I say the thing, it's like you never think something will happen to you until it does. Or you hear about these stories of your ex-coworker's best friend whose daughter got in a car accident, got paralyzed. Well, I'm like that story. I'm that girl that, is this, crazy thing happen. So at 32 years old, 4 years ago, basically I slowly, day by day, got weaker and weaker and weaker until I got paralyzed from the neck down. Also lost my voice, and I was also having difficulty breathing and a little bit of trouble swallowing as well.
So before that, and I can relate in my own way, because 14 years ago for me, I fell off of a balcony, drunk, and fractured my spine. And yeah, I say that and people are like, oh my God, like that's so horrible. And I'm like, I've been in it for 14 years. Like, I'm okay,
Yeah.
And so I can definitely relate in that aspect. Obviously being a quadriplegic is a whole other level to experience. And before we really even get into that, what was your life before this happened to you?
Yeah. Well, I want to say something real quick.
Yeah.
You say most people, when you say that, they are just like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. And when you said it, I laughed. What's interesting is when you've gone through your own trauma, you gain this really deep empathy and understanding, to the point of, I think when you go through trauma of any kind, and I know the word trauma kind of sucks, but it's the word I'm going with right now. But when you go through that in any capacity, you feel like the same person on the inside. Like you still feel like you. It's just like you're trapped in this new body or this new circumstance, because
Right.
it can be your circumstances changed of any kind. It doesn't have to be your body. And it's just like you still feel like it's like I'm still me, but all this stuff happens. So when you go through that, it is nice when people just talk to you past that. Like they talk to the you that you still feel like on the inside, instead of like, oh, I need to, talk to you like you're paralyzed now.
Right.
It's like, well, or you could talk to me like I'm funny and awesome.
Right.
That's still how
It
I feel
doesn't
on the
define
inside.
everything about me, like just because,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So before I got super floppy and was kicking it in a wheelchair, well, not even like kicking it laying down, I was living in Las Vegas, basically living my best life. But the thing is that's interesting is I thought I had life figured out. I was just like killing it. I know exactly what I'm doing. I was plant-based, but a healthy plant-based, not like French fries and Cheetos. It was like, detox teas, green smoothies, green juices, quinoa, all that stuff. And I meditated every day. I actually used to meditate to learn gratitude for the ability to walk, which is super ironic.
Wow.
I got sunlight, I did grounding, I had a great group of friends. I was very in love. I traveled, have great family, just checking all the boxes. And I thought if anyone was going to get sick, it definitely wouldn't be me. And then I
Right.
did anyways.
You were meditating on feeling grateful to walk.
Yeah, nuts. But it was hard to really feel grateful about it, because I wasn't grateful. Like I was just like, this is walking. Like the chances of me, like I know that I'm lucky to be able to walk, but I took it so for granted, to the extent that I never thought that would even be an issue unless I broke my leg doing something awesome.
Right.
And then couldn't walk for like a month. But yeah.
And so when you had to deal with this is an autoimmune disease, right?
Yeah.
That sprung on. What is it called?
CIDP. Chronic
CID.
inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. It's the acute form of my diagnosis is Guillain-Barré, or GBS, which some people have heard of, but no one's heard of the chronic form, which is what I have, CIDP.
And so as you move forward, I've seen your video, and you're so jovial, and you're wearing costumes in your videos, and you're being really funny about everything you're going through. I'm sure it wasn't all like that, right? But how did you deal with it? How were you able to kind of deal with the situation? But for me, I didn't deal with it. When it happened to me, I was like, this is not my life. This is not what I'm dealing with. I wasn't in any level of acceptance, like, at all. It took me years to get there. So, share how you perceive the situation and you move forward.
I talk to so many people that have gone through some kind of physical change, and the ones that have a good attitude and have learned to accept and stuff like that. In the beginning, they thought had no doubt they're going to make a full raging recovery. They're like, this is temporary. I will make a 100% recovery. No one can tell me any different. Were you like that?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I went and I was trying out I traveled the world. I tried out all sorts of alternative therapies.
Before or after? Oh, okay, after. Yeah.
Afterwards. Yeah. Yeah, so it took me 3 years. It took me to a point 3 years later where I was like, wait a minute, like, all my friends are doing their thing, and I'm really not doing anything. And that really started propelling me to figuring out how to move forward in my life. And what was your take in your position?
Yeah, and I know that I didn't answer your question, but I just
That's
that
okay.
as I was hearing you talking, I had a question for you. It was just
Yeah.
that I feel like that's because some of the stuff people go through it alone and they feel alone, and there's these feelings and these emotions they have that they don't realize are pretty common and normal. There's other people out there, but that's like a common theme I've continued to hear is that when people go through a big change, like I mean, it could even be like a financial like hit. You know, there's like, oh well, this is temporary. Like I'm gonna be
Right.
making money in no time. Like it doesn't matter. It's like some of these like things that just like knock us down. I feel like that's such a common thing is that people just feel like, oh, this is temporary. Like I will make a full recovery. And then when you get hit with the fact that it's not going to be as easy to jump back and be resilient or just get back to how things were so easily or ever,
Hmm.
that seems to be when people really start their journey of recovery because you get hit with that like realization and often depression whenever you get hit with that. I got hit with that a little over a year ago. But anyways, but to answer your question, for me, dealing with it, I had a pivotal moment and I was sitting in my room. I was paralyzed from the neck down. And I thought this could be really sad. Like I remember this moment like so good. I remember I was sitting. And I was like, this could be really sad. Like people have been telling me over and over again, you know, I was 32. I was real social and, you know, lots of people I knew. So I'm fortunate I had a really good support system, but I also had people telling me all day, every day, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry this
Oh
happened
my
to you.
God. Yeah.
And I didn't even get into all the details of why my situation was so sad, but there's different levels as with your story and so many people, you know, there's these layers of why it sucks so bad. And I got told over and over, I'm so sorry, Courtney. I feel so bad for what you're going through. And I was just like, but I don't want to feel like that. And I
Hmm.
was like, you know, I lost my home, my job, my love of my life, moved halfway across the country from my group of friends. I couldn't itch myself, wipe myself, feed myself, dress myself. You know, I shower myself. I literally lost, changed my own tampons. I lost everything you can lose except for love because I
Hmm.
have such a great support system. But besides that, it's like in my mind, I didn't lose my mind. I lost my voice. I couldn't communicate very well.
How long did
Uh,
you lose your voice for?
Not too long. I would say it was really bad for like 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
But it was really, really annoying. That was more annoying than not being able to walk, like not being able to express yourself.
I can
Super annoying,
imagine. I
but
can imagine actually.
yeah. But yeah, so I was just like, I lost all this stuff and all these abilities. I can't go to people's birthdays. I can't pet my dog. Like I can't write, I can't type, I can't text. Like this could be sad, but the thing that I don't want to lose also is the next few years of my life wishing they were over. Like I'm in my 30s, I'm in my early-ish 30s. Like this is a lot of people I talk to's favorite decade of their life. And here I am, and I don't want to survive them. I don't want to wish they were over. I don't want to live every day miserable and just hoping and waiting to get to the other side where I can be happy. I was like, that actually bothered me more than anything to know the next few years were going to be lost. So I was just like, okay, I'm not going to do it. Like, I refuse to lose time to being unhappy. So I just made it my mission to love the years of my life that most people keep telling me they're sorry I'm living.
Hmm.
And I wanted to make it years of my life that I love just as much in a different way.
That's so it's so amazing because I was totally on the flip side of that, right? It was totally like I got paralyzed when I was 22. So like I literally and yeah,
But
and so I had everybody saying I'm sorry. Anytime I went out, like I had strangers coming to me like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. You're so young in a chair and like all that kind of stuff." And so I literally thought that my best years have already passed. Like
this is,
Yeah.
unless I get out of the chair, like I'm gonna always think that my best years had passed, and that is so far from the truth today.
It
For
is,
sure.
and that's so sad. That's sad. That's more sad than being in a wheelchair.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, well, I'll never be as happy as I was. I mean, yeah, that's sad.
And so many people accept that for themselves for non-physical issues, right? Like whether it's like, you know, losing a relationship or even having a financial breakdown or like something like that. It's just like the world is over and now how do I start? And I guess it's really like what we've experienced has really caused us to really rethink so much and how to approach life from a whole, like, I mean, there's so much growth that comes with it, and to go through the road of like, okay, like how do I move forward from here, right? And so when did you start like really portraying your story to the world? Because you really started going live or on social media to express what you were going through. When did that start happening?
Yeah, it's so cool. Social media has been a really big part of my healing. Like, I think I never did go to a psychologist. And although maybe I should have, you know, like I'm an advocate, I think everyone should. But for me, where I talked about it, my cognitive behavioral therapy was just like when I was feeling something, often when I was feeling inspired or when I had an epiphany or when I found a puzzle piece of myself or life or whatever, you know, I would just go live on Facebook and talk it out in a very positive way. And what was so magical about that for me, a lot of things were magical, but two main things is when you're telling your story on a public profile that anyone in the world can see, how do you want your story to sound? How do you want to be as the character, the main character in your story? What kind of character traits do you want to have? Like, and I would always talk about like, this is what I'm trying and this is where I'm going with it and this is how I'm feeling. So I would want people to think I'm feeling good. So I would speak that way. I would want, you know, we all care a little bit about what people think, but it's like, but it was this crazy cool situation where I was telling my story, you know, presently, past, and future in a way that made me feel the best. So it was like, and then you have to, you know, and then I would live it. You know, I would live what I was saying, and it was really, really great for me. And then also, it's like when you can be vulnerable, because I was never fake, because being fake doesn't make you feel good either. I was very authentic, like, but at that point I was so humbled that it didn't matter if I had snot coming out of my nose in a video, which happened a few times because I couldn't lift my hand and I was crying and I couldn't wipe my nose because I was paralyzed. So I just had snot hanging and or like spit from my mouth, like, because I'm crying. Like at that point, or I talked about like, I don't know, I talked about some stuff you shouldn't say out loud on Facebook, but I didn't care. I was like, I am paralyzed from the neck down, living with my parents at age 33. Like I'm humbled AF. Like I have nothing to prove or hide at this point. I'm in survival mode. And like, I'm just trying to keep my head above water and I'm just going to be honest about whatever. So when you're vulnerable, you know, it was easier for me to be vulnerable than a lot of people because it was like, I didn't have anything to lose. Like, but when you're vulnerable, like I'm sure you're familiar with Brene Brown.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. And it's just like, I love her too. I just got done reading or listening to one of her books, Daring Greatly, but you know, she stresses so much that when you're vulnerable, that's when you actually are able to connect with other people. And when you create this space for yourself to be real and be like, I don't have it together. Like I'm falling apart. This is hard. I'm trying, but I don't know if it's going to work. Like when you're vulnerable, you allow the space for others to be like, yeah, you know, actually I'm kind of going through this other thing too. Or like it opens this space for people to look at you and be like, she's not perfect. It's okay for me not to be perfect. And I like her or him because they're being real. And I'm drawn to that confidence and that vulnerability. And I can connect with that more so than someone that's like, dude, you should see my 6-pack. My marriage is perfect. And oh my God, I made so much money. You're like, awesome. Like I have nothing to talk to you about
I hear you.
unless it becomes a contest of who's the best. But so by sharing and being vulnerable and allowing that space for myself and other people, it created this massive support system for me that I felt loved by strangers and people I'd never met. And I felt connected and not alone by this support system that happened just because of social media and being open online. So it was very cool to have this support system. And then threefold, actually, sorry, I'm running on, but
No, go
the
ahead.
third is like when you have pain and struggle and suffering, if you can't find purpose in it and assign meaning to how it's been beneficial to you or others, then that pain becomes more painful and becomes it's for nothing. And it's like that is something that your soul cannot be resilient from. So it is your life depends on finding a reason, a meaning, a purpose to this trauma or this struggle or this suffering or this loss. And that can be as simple, and I don't know if simple is the right word, but like it can be just you learned how to understand and have deep empathy for someone else going through something similar.
Mm-hmm.
So, or like you're able to help somebody else because of it. Like that's a great way, a great meaning. And with my social media, I've been able to help a lot of people. So that I really will credit that one thing. Well, my family too. But they kind of go in the support system thing.
For sure.
That one thing is like, I feel like why I never got depressed or why I never fell apart, because I always had meaning and purpose and a reason for being here alive in my situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like I still felt good about who I was because I could help other people because of my struggle. So anyways, like that's.
Yeah, no, I relate to that totally. When I decided to move forward, it took me 4 years really, and then I moved out of my parents' house, and I was, like really just figuring out how to be independent. I knew like being a paraplegic, like I still had functionality. I can dress myself. I just had to figure out how to do everything without my legs. And so when I moved out of my parents' house. I moved to Houston. That's actually where my accident happened. So and my parents live in McAllen, Texas, South Texas. So I moved back to Houston, and I start like going and doing things and getting involved in wheelchair basketball and all these kind of things. And everybody's like, "Oh, you're such an inspiration!" Like everything's flipped when I changed my perception of my reality. Everybody else was receiving me differently, and here I was doing things, and then I got that sense of like, oh, there's purpose to this, there's meaning to this, like this actually helps, and that totally changed that frame of mind. So I completely resonate with you with all of that. And I love that you brought up Brene Brown. I think I read all of her books now. She's, and for whoever doesn't know who Brene Brown, I definitely, suggest you check her out. She's been on Oprah. She has amazing books. She's a researcher out of the University of Houston.
From Houston.
Yeah, she's from Houston. And she, she's done all this research around the power behind, being vulnerable and showing up, and how most people don't end up being like that success. The reason why people are not as successful in their lives is because like they held back, that when they failed, like that stopped them from moving forward. And it's about showing up. And she talks a lot about like, no matter how many times you fall down, you're trying to get up and still be in the arena, right? You're still being in the the rink, or in the fight of life, or whatever. And I think that has served me a lot, in that like no matter what I have to go through, no matter what challenges I face, I'm just always going to keep getting back up. Like it's just like it's normal now. And just based on that mentality, I think is so crucial to being able to move forward and being successful in any aspect of your life. Right? Would you agree?
Yeah. I just shared, like you're saying about the knowing that you're in the arena and you're in the fight and getting back up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what I was thinking while you were saying that is I shared something about it today on Facebook actually, but I was talking to my mom, and it was before I was at my mom last night, but a few years before my autoimmune happened and I got paralyzed and all that stuff. I remember I was at a conference, an entrepreneur conference, and I thought to myself, I really wish I had a good story. Like these people, yeah, these people, these motivational speakers, these authors, these people that start businesses. And it's like they have these like really crazy, awesome stories of resilience, or they learn these life lessons. They went through something crazy, and or they had this huge achievement, and they have all this purpose and meaning and zest for life, and like have something to say. I'm like, God, I wish, like, I love my life, but I mean, I wish I had meaning and purpose in my life. And the thing about that is, I think back to that. I really think back to that day often where I'm just like, I got what I wished for. And I think at the time I didn't understand the magnitude of what I was hoping for, because when you want meaning and purpose and courage and to feel proud of yourself and be an overcomer and be impressive and inspiring and like know the depths of your soul,
Mm-hmm.
it comes often, not always, but often it comes at the cost. Like you get that from being thrown in the arena.
Yep.
And you get that from falling down and getting beat up and crawling your way and climbing your way back up. Like not by sitting in the stands and being an onlooker and being like, well, I learned a lesson today by watching that person get ripped to shreds. Like, wow, that's impressive. But it's like to have that in the depths of your soul and know that kind of experience, like you're the one that needs to be in the arena, getting back up and falling back down to get that win,
Mm-hmm.
to get that success.
Exactly. And something about you is I feel like you fell down a lot when you and as you know were working your way back and you're expressing yourself so vulnerably to people, and you regained a lot of things back. What was that process like from being completely quadriplegic to starting to get up, and what do you think served that, as far as being in such communication, vulnerable communication with social media and stuff? Do you think all that played a part? Yeah.
I mean, I think that the social media really helped me emotionally, and nothing is just emotional or just physical. So I know the healthier my mind and my heart, and my emotions are, the healthier my body is. Like I find it really interesting, like a Bruce, of course I'm blanking on his name. Dr.
Epigenetics.
Bruce.
Lipton.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Bruce Lipton. I love like some of the stuff he talks about, how when you're in a state of love and in a state of these positive emotions, your inflammation's lower.
Mm-hmm.
And like some of these things like stress and stuff like that, it actually changes the physical makeup of your blood
Mm-hmm.
because of the hormones or whatever. But like your body's actually physically, what's running through your veins is changing based on what you're thinking and feeling. And I thought that was really interesting.
Literally
So
every
nothing's just,
second.
yeah. Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting, but I would say the social media was definitely healing for me mentally and physically, or I mean, mentally and emotionally more so, which again, they're tied, but physically, I don't know. I did a ton of stuff, but I didn't start getting better until I took a look at my life, and I was trying everything, like every Western medication alternative, like everything you can try, I was doing it and I wasn't getting better. I went to the Mayo Clinic.
Mm-hmm.
Like this one time, this guy was like, quit going to all these witch doctors and go to a real doctor. I'm like, how do you think I got an MRI and diagnosis from the Mayo? Does that not count?
Right.
But yeah, I'm also into the spiritual and alternative treatments too, but like I'm doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing was working. So I had to look at my life and be like, why am I not getting better? Like what's keeping me sick? And to spare speaking negative things. Basically, I cut out people, things, places, whatever that I thought caused me harm.
Mm.
And from the last string I cut, 2 days later, I started improving, and I've only gotten better since. Super
Wow.
wild. Yeah. And that was a person. But yeah, it's super crazy. But, you know, physically speaking, you know, just like a ton of physical therapy and like exercise. And I could talk about that all day, but, and I
Yeah.
haven't made a full recovery.
Right.
No.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, that's interesting, right? For that, once you've let go of people, once you let go of certain situations, I mean, when we talk about autoimmune disease, don't they say a lot of time, or most of the time, that's stress related? Is
Yeah.
that,
And I can, yeah, but everyone's going to tell you to change your diet.
yeah, nobody
Wait.
ever tells you about the energetic, the people, you know, all the toxicity around you. And it's
Yeah.
totally huge. That's totally such a big factor
Yeah.
to, you know, you know, there's this thing, mirror neurons. It's the scientific concept that, like, no matter who you're talking to or whatever you're, you know, whatever you're exposing yourself to, be it a TV show or people, like, you're literally being programmed to think a certain way, to be a certain way based on everything you're exposed to. So everything that you're exposing yourself to is playing a part in your psyche, in your
What's it called?
mirror neurons.
Mirror neurons. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, they did a study where they had a baby and an adult, and they put electrodes on their head, their brain, and so the adult, they had a bunch of like toys and like objects in front of each person, or
Mhm.
the baby and the adult, and this exact same objects. And so the adult would pick one object and then put it back down. The baby would pick up the same thing and put it back down, and the brain, the same part of the brain that was activated in the adult was the exact same part of the brain that was activated in the baby. So it's just really interesting because it really plays a role in
Mhm.
how we learned and how we take in information, and everything we expose ourselves to is important. So even in my own journey, I'm like, okay, I gotta start letting go of people here and there. Like, I'm done
It's
being a
hard.
people pleaser and like all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's hard, but at a certain point, like, it just comes to, like, you're putting yourself first, right? Like, it's like you're
Mhm.
number one, and if the people around you aren't necessarily changing or don't want to change and they're not serving you, then it's in your best interest to make those changes. And you're such a perfect example, because once you did it, you started walking and all that.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. I mean, that same week, I got a different treatment. I got something called plasma exchange. Doesn't matter, but it was a different medication, or not a medication, treatment. So I would say it's hard for me to know how much of it was that new treatment versus the cutting strings.
Hmm.
Part of me is like, before I cut the strings, I was so resistant to medication. They were just like, I don't even know if you're diagnosed right, because like you're so bad,
Yeah.
and like medication's so not working at all. So I kind of feel like, had I not cut the strings, or when I cut the strings, it allowed
It
the
opened you up.
medication to do its job with my
Yeah.
body.
Hmm.
And I think before that, the stressors just caused so much havoc on my emotions, which caused havoc on my body, that the medications and treatments just couldn't handle it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, because emotions are like chemicals, like they're actual chemicals that hormones and all that, right? That get released in
Mhm.
your body, all the stress hormones of adrenaline and cortisol and all that stuff. And I love Dr. Bruce Lipton because
Yeah.
because I mean, first of all, like, this dude's like been doing this epigenetic. He's the father of epigenetics, which is the
And
science of our
stem
genes.
cells, right?
Yeah, well, stem cells, and well, he also focuses a lot on our genes, and like,
Mhm.
literally, like, for before him, science has said that we only use like 2% of our DNA, and that like 98% of our DNA is they just called it junk DNA because they didn't know what it did. But
Mm.
now when when epigenetics was formed and they got really deep into the science, they realized that when we change our emotions and when we release emotions and tap into different levels of being, our DNA actually changes. And so that's interesting, because before before we're even born and stuff, like, we actually get pre-programmed based on our genetics of the past. So a lot of our ancestors, kind of like whatever emotional baggage they didn't deal with, kind of gets passed on in our genetics, and then we kind of have our lives and think it's all us. But when we realize that it's when we can shift these things, just shift these thought patterns and emotions and things like that, not only are you like changing things on an emotional level, but it really is on a physical level, because the DNA is changing, and then that gets passed down to the future generations. So,
Oh, does it after you
yeah,
change it? Oh, that's
yeah,
weird. And then they
yeah,
can change it back.
yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you probably could change it back if you went back or something like that. But yeah, no, I'm fascinated by that science, and I've gotten deep in the rabbit hole in a lot of these kind of people and energy, and really trying to understand emotions. And so, like, a lot of the work I do with people is really like, hey, like, one thing that I know I didn't learn, I think most people don't learn, is emotional intelligence. Like, you really do got to feel like every level of your emotion, right? I feel like we are kind of brought up in that we don't go so deep into our pain, and we also don't go so far into our joy, into our happiness. We kind of like limit it on both ends, and that actually kind of stays with us. And so for you, what one of your big messages, right, is to live every emotion, to experience every emotion fully. And what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that, well, from a viewpoint of someone that goes, went through trauma or had an illness or a health change or whatever, I think that a problem or something I've learned is culturally, and it's like a cultural thing you learn, but it's also instinctive. When someone has a problem, you want to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's awesome. Like, that's amazing. And that is a survival skill that no matter what the problem is, it's going to be fixed and it's going to be fine. It's going to be happy. And then as people, we get really uncomfortable sitting with someone when they are feeling something bad. And we're like, how can we change this to where they're feeling something good?
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when you're the person that goes through loss? You lose your ability to walk, or you lose your marriage, or you lose a loved one, or, whatever it is. When you go through loss, like, if you loved it, you're in grief. I mean, like, my Pilates place is closing today, and all the girls there are in grief right now. Like, it's like their little place where they teach, is closing. They're all really sad. It's just like, it doesn't matter what it is. If you loved it, you're going to have a period of grief. And also, side note, the stages of grief,
Mm-hmm.
the 5 stages of grief are completely out of context.
Mm.
They were never meant to be applied to grief in that way. It was only meant to be applied to someone dying. The stages of grief of death,
Right.
where you figure out that you find out you're dying and what you go through before death. That's it. It's not supposed to be applied to someone going through a chronic illness, a chronic health change, or loss, or they lose someone else they love. Like, it was never meant. Anyways. So when you go through grief of any magnitude, you're suffering from loss, and it's because you love something. And then anytime we talk about it, about how we feel, if it's not happy and positive, usually our feelings are invalidated. Because this is what happens. People say, oh, I know that, you can't use your hands very well, because I can't. I haven't mentioned that, but I still have a lot of paralysis in my hands. And people are like, oh, but wouldn't you say, like, I know that sucks, but wouldn't you say that, like, you've learned so much from this experience? And I'm like, I'm not saying I haven't. I'm just saying my hands suck. Like, and that's okay. Like, that's like you saying, like, oh yeah, I'm in a wheelchair, and someone being like, oh, but this, and it's
Right.
like, no, but this is just a fact. Like, I'm in a wheelchair. Like, it doesn't, you don't need to fix how I feel right now.
Mhm.
Cause I'm not even complaining. I'm not even feeling anything. Like, I'm good with it. You're the one that's freaking out over it. But anyways, it's just like, I just went on a few tangents there, but
No, you're good. You're
as far as
totally.
emotions go, that's been something I've really, really come to see, is how much people's feelings are invalidated when their feelings are very valid. But
Mhm.
the people are talking to just want to fix it and change it as fast as possible because it's uncomfortable and awkward. But really, I remember your question is like feeling your feelings, but really, it's very healthy in any kind of grief, of loss of any magnitude, any sort, to sit with your depression, to sit with your sadness, and know that that's okay, and that it's okay to not look at the bright side every second. You can and we are polar people. We are, we can feel two opposing feelings
Mhm.
at the same time. I know I'm a positive person. I know you're a positive person. But if we ever get sad or mad about something, that doesn't mean we're not a positive person.
Right.
It just means an emotion flared up, and
Mhm.
that's okay. And it's
Mhm.
okay to feel that feeling and honor it and then move on. But
Yeah, and in my experience, every time I, sit with an emotion, like go through it and get on the other side, there's happiness at the end of it. There's like this
mhm.
kind of, I don't know, a lot of times I get like epiphanies or like more, like clarity even, like once I, move through it, right? Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of everybody like I was saying earlier, everybody wants the growth, and everybody wants to become a better person. Everybody wants to know that they're better than they were the day before.
Hmm.
But that comes with everything that we're talking about, everything you're saying. Like, the transformation is not usually comfortable, and yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of funny when I work with people, they'll like, especially when emotions come up and there might be crying or like something like that. They're like, "I'm
Mhm.
so sorry." I was like, "No, no, no, keep going. Like, keep. That's what I want. Like let
It's
it out."
good.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think that is, probably, the most important thing, as far as living life fully, and wanting to, so many people are just so avoiding of it. And so yeah, that's I don't know. That's just a great point. Um, Now, what, like, you being who you are today, right? You just came out with, you're part of a book that just came out recently,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, what was that about?
It was just a collective. I got invited to write a chapter in this book, and it was just I think it's like 6 women. They all just have like a trauma to triumph kind of story.
Hmm.
So I just wrote a little snippet in there, and then I wrote a chapter for another book that it's not out yet though, but it's basically, we all have that person or that love or that extra added energy sometimes that enters our story and helps pull us through, even if it's like a Brene Brown book, like just like
Hmm.
something that kind of interrupts our struggle that we kind of latch onto. And like I said, it could be a person that kind of pulls you through. So I wrote a chapter in a book that's about, again, a collective of stories. Eventually I'll write my own, but that's like
It's
down
coming.
the road.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I can already tell. I can already tell. My book is in the editing process right now.
Is
So
it?
yeah,
Oh my
uh,
gosh.
yeah.
That's
It's called Rolling with
awesome.
It. It's called Rolling with It. Lessons learned while sitting down.
That's
So
awesome.
I'm pretty excited about that.
Oh my gosh, how cool. How long did that take to write it?
Oh my God. Well, honestly, I've had like multiple attempts to it. And
Yeah.
actually what's interesting is that back in March, I was, dealing with my own like situation, my own emotion, and let myself like kind of just go through it. And it was kind of a tough situation at the time, but when I got out of it, I realized that I was kind of holding on to this deep sense of unworthiness, just kind of this general sense
Mhm.
of unworthiness that was really kind of plaguing different aspects of my life. And so like a few years before, I actually wrote a version of this book and like just shelved it. And then when I got out of this emotion, like back in, I think it was April, um, I realized, I was like, oh, I didn't actually do anything with the book because I'm still like feeling like this. So in April, I started rewriting it, and I got done, I think in September. Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah, it's
Is it just like your story, or is it like every chapter is a specific lesson?
it's my story, but in like lessons are just intertwined through all of my experiences and the many teachers and you know, books and things that I came across that helped me along the way. And so yeah, it's pretty exciting.
How fun. That's so exciting. That's such a big deal. Are you self-published? Are you publishing
I'm
through
planning on
somebody?
self-publishing it, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that's the way to go.
Yeah, so yeah, basically, I have a few people in my corner that are pointing me in the right direction, and this editor that I'm working with is all about self-publishing. So, yeah, nowadays, especially if you don't, you know, if you're not like huge, if you're not like, you know, humongous, publishers might not even take you. So, so basically, in this day and age, especially, like it's just best to kind of create your following, create, you know, your community, and
Your
then
tribe.
yeah, your tribe, and then get that book out there and see what happens, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
cool. How fun. That's
yeah,
so exciting.
absolutely.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's been a long work in progress, but I'm excited about it. I've been thinking about it for like 8 years or something. So.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And so with you, you know, I know you have Unicort, which I think is like fantastic. Like it's like the coolest name, I think. You instead of unicorn, Unicort, right? So that's cool. So if people want to connect with you and you know, work with you in any way, like how can they do that?
Yeah, so I have a couple cool things coming up. I do throw retreats, although my next one is sold out. But I'll have more coming that are in the works. And then I have an online membership program that'll be starting in January, and it's group coaching and stuff like that. But it'll be cool. I put a lot of time and effort and work into it, but it's basically just like finding joy through trauma, like getting out of that hole and just working on that. But other than that, you can just contact me through Facebook is the best way, through my Facebook Messenger. I check that every day. So I know my Facebook page is Unicort, Unicort.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Courtney, thank you so much for coming on with me and having this conversation. I feel like we
Yeah,
covered
thank you.
so many cool topics, and I'm sure everybody's going to be excited to hear your story and our conversation here. And so everybody that's watching, thanks for watching. And always remember to be here right now where depression and anxiety cannot exist. Thank you.